Labas rytas, gerbiami konferencijos.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the conference on Digital Lithuania. We will hear 5 presentations and then we will have a discussion. And finally, we'll be able to answer the question whether Digital Lithuania is a dream or an ambitious goal. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rimantas Sinkevičius, Chair of the Seimas Committee on Economics.
Thank you, Ruta. Head of the subcommittee, I am grateful to vice ministers, businessmen, and our guests for participation. Welcome to the conference. Congratulations. Whenever you look at Lithuania from far away, you see that IT technology and its development in public institutions and the system was always in the domain of the Ministry of Transport. I was a minister back then. We made important projects and Lithuania, as a result, made a step towards better and better positions. Today, we're in a good shape. Lithuania is 13th out of 28 member states. That's not too bad. Some indicators of ours, though, are better than average, and some other are not as good as we would like them to be. We are leaders in the use of internet, in video telephony. When we took the prizes from Commissioner Göttinger for broadband internet and for the systems that we organized, we looked well. We also look well in public services and the use of IT in this sector. However, what's most important is how useful these services are for users, for the end users. We have certain challenges as well. One of them, in my opinion, is the inability to implement large-scale projects on a fairly fast scale and basis. It's quite sad. The training of the elderly is also difficult. We have our own heritage, but most probably we should finance the training of the elderly so they can manage their family or personal matters through internet. The use of open data is also a problem, which derives mainly from the consolidation of IT resources. We launched the process, but it's now not moving onward. So both business and public sector has many databases and database resources. There are only at least 200 of them, but there is no consolidation and no unified use of these resources. There are only ideas about that, but not real use. I would like to see more practical implementation. I'm happy to welcome the Ministry of Economy and Innovation, where I work on this area. Starts planning and takes on initiative. Industry 4.0 is a program for the digitalization of industry, which is to be implemented by 2030. It is a real program. There are matters to be controlled, and I'm happy to do that. We will all expect that digitalization will provide both easiness of use, and also an economic effect. Billions could be created, billions of added value could be created in this area. The EU also attaches a lot of importance to digitalization, to artificial intelligence. There are plans in place, and a serious investment is provided through the European Horizon program, as well as through other areas. 20 billion euro per year is to be invested in that area, which is a huge amount. I hope that our government, our business, and our government institutions create and facilitate the use of this money. A unified digital European program is being developed. This will offer opportunities to share databases between member states. Transportation and logistics is in particular going to be much more effective thanks to that. I hope that participants of the discussion will voice their thoughts. It's not often that such debates happen. I hope that you find solutions and provide amendments, suggestions as to amendments of the legislation so that the ambitious goals are reached indeed. I hope you have a successful debate, and I wish you every success. It's unfortunate that I need to leave you because I need to, or at least one of the MPs present here will need to be present in the extraordinary session of the Parliament, extraordinary sitting of the Parliament. Thank you for your attention.
Ačiū, gerbiamas komiteto pirmininkė.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So please go and vote in order to fulfill your duty as member of the Seimas. You can also follow the webcast on the website of the Seimas. As Mr. Sinkevičius has mentioned, digital economy affects not only the lives of people, but also the economy of the state. The calculations are made that digital economy by 2025 could create 8 additional billion euros. Now, digital economy amounts to 8% of the GDP, but by 2025, this number and this percentage could reach 19%. Now, in the context of Europe, Lithuania is on average, but we have all the potential to be a breakthrough country. We have good basis, good foundations in many areas. We have talents in science, technologies, and engineering. Unfortunately, Lithuania joined the digital initiatives quite late. Therefore, this might be the reason why we are a bit lagging behind, or we are on the average. And that is why we are not very much related to older technologies that are very costly to change. Therefore, we can promote a faster growth than Western countries. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Elius Čivilis, Vice Minister of Economy and Innovation. And I have no doubt that he has many more information on digital economy and on our goals and ambitions for the future. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ruta.
Žinot, visą laiką.
You know, as far as technology is concerned, you always want to be better, but it doesn't always work.
Veikia. Kur yra projektorius? Ai. O, super. Ir turbūt vėl užpridinau. Gerai, tai aš tada labai, turėdamas tą 15 minučių.
In view that I have only a quarter of an hour, I will speak about digital Lithuania. Let me start with the main part of my presentation without further ado. In Lithuania, basketball is more important than digitalization. it was all a religion, and we learned something through basketball, something that can be seen both in R&D, business, and even public governance. The three lessons every Lithuanian learns from basketball is that this is a global market. When we started playing basketball, we were local players between town teams. And in international championships, we lost 3 times in a row. And when we lost 124 to 10, we decided to play the international basketball. So 2 years later, we won our first EuroLeague gold medal, which means that even in business, when we want to be internationally competitive, if we want to take up the international technology, we need to be part of it. The second lesson. We're not very rich, but basketball taught us that not money is the most important, leadership is. Think about all of our achievements, the Olympic bronze, the success in club games. Our clubs were not ever the richest players in the EuroLeague. I doubt that they could become better if we doubled their funding. And third lesson, we're not the best of exporters, but we're good exporters of basketball players. In NBA, nobody looks into your past, into how good you were in your own league. They look into your future potential. The same goes for business and startups in particular. Your future value that you are going to create is your value now. So as far as future potential is concerned, let's come back to 1989. This was the first year of testing of blockchain. It was called the Baltic Way. The Baltic Way had all the characteristics and features of blockchain. It's decentralized. It includes free participation, and it's non-revocative. The country, which previously was famous for religion, is now known for other matters. As Member of Parliament has already mentioned, it's infrastructure, public services, and many other good things. How did we come to be that way? We know the evolution. In 1990s, we didn't have digital programs. We had analogous technology. In the beginning of the last century, of this century, we started using the IT components to ease our work. Today, we see a new digital transformation. When I speak about it, let me illustrate that. Let me show you how things are changing. We know there are e-schools, e-taxes, e-police. These are islands which have isolated infrastructure and data. They have different levels of competence, and they are oriented towards creating their own internal value. As for digital transformation, what we aim for is a unified architecture, data-based, open state sector, which is to be expanded further on. This consists of 3 components. The first one, as Ruta Miliūtė mentioned, is digital economy. Digital economy demonstrates that our GDP is growing. Forecasts for GDP growth are good. But if we look into the Department of Statistics, the traditional sectors of economy, such as agriculture in Lithuania, show diminishing indicators. Other indicators which we still fail to understand are increasing. Finland, our neighbor, were more pragmatic. They stated that within the next decade, the structure of economy is going to change. And the transformation will reach the traditional industries, which will be influenced by the internet and smart intelligence. And our future is a mission to the moon. We don't know many things, but we still know something. We know it's going to be a digital world. We know it's going to be digital skills which we don't have today. We know that traditional sectors will be transformed. We know that the economy will be technology driven and the needs will be transformed as well. In knowing what we know, we can already make decisions. If we look at what happens in the world, you don't need to be a genius to see the greatest companies in the world, the technology companies, which have transformed the traditional sector companies. They affect the global economy to the greatest extent. This means that go digital is most important. Go digital or go home. The state is the main player in this digital agenda, so it needs to demonstrate a good example. Let's remember, last year we marked our anniversary of independence, 100th anniversary at that. We asked our citizens what they wanted as a present, and we selected 3 ideas. One of them is to reduce bureaucracy by digitalization. This means that our society wants a digitalized and a modern state sector and gives us a mandate to work in that direction. Our vision: the state will be a platform just like any other infrastructure in our country, like roads, like electricity. It will not be a luxury. It will serve the entire society, create benefits for all our people. The key elements of that platform will be a private state cloud, which will function and do the functions of the state. And through its work, it will facilitate the work of our citizens, startups, and businesses in creating products. This is not an overnight way, but it can't be reached overnight. But this is the road we're going to take. We start with technology and governance models. We go to database, data-driven state governance, and we use the newest technology. Our goal is that our citizens can communicate with the state in real time in the way that is convenient for them, without going to officials and without going to any public institutions. We have regular meetings right now with industries and government representatives. We create ideas. Society is the third most important part of digital Lithuania, and we try to involve the society. You most probably know the project about a small computer for children. It has been recognized worldwide as one of the best digital skills development program. Our 5 farmers with microcomputers do things that the producers never imagined to be possible. There are many such initiatives. Most of them come from society, from the private sector, from NGOs, non-profit organizations. In other words, digitalization is now in fashion in Lithuania. We know that it is in fashion, and we want public sector to use it. We have a forum in the state sector which assembles people from the public sector and encourages them to take interest in new technology, practical implementation, and development of that movement. The progress of digital Lithuania will be exemplified by the following illustrations. Paulius from Infobalt will speak about that in greater detail. We have all heard about fintech ecosystem and its use. Our tax inspectorate is very smart in using digitalization. It has created a virtual accountant system. It allows SMEs that work transparently refuse the accountancy because the inspectorate receives all the data about their activities. From my presentation, take 3 lessons. First, that basketball is our religion. Second, digital transformation happens now. And third, digitalization is the choice of the society. So, as Member of Parliament says, if we can't do it for ourselves, let's do it for the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Čivilis, for this interesting presentation. And I would like to address the audience. Do you have any questions? You can use this time. We will have the discussion afterwards. Well, the Lithuanian young generation in Lithuania, in the digital area, is not lagging behind other countries. The older generation, as Mr. Čivilis mentioned, is often left behind. So my question is the digital Lithuania for the younger generation or for all? Or shouldn't this question be raised at all? This is a fundamental question. I don't know how to correctly respond to it. Of course, all the Lithuania is digital, and digital Lithuania is for all. It does not depend on your age or area you live in, because our history shows that a dream day will never come or will not have the finish line that all the life changes all of a sudden. Lithuania, all the Lithuania is taking part in that. I'm happy that we have different programs that are oriented to our older generation. People of an older age are taught to use the internet to order the e-services from the government, and this is a very important factor that determines the breakthrough of the entire Lithuania. Do you have any more questions to the speaker? Okay. I would like to thank Mr. Čivilis and give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Kęstutis Šetkus, Director of the Agency for Science, Innovation and Technology. He will speak about innovation reform as a chance for business.
Labą dieną visi.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad to be in this audience. And it is encouraging that we are discussing the same things. Maybe we're using different angles, but our aim is a more digital and more progressive Lithuania. My slides will not be so impressive as of the previous speaker, but I will present a model of the innovation. And I will explain why the reform is necessary and why we're doing this. The agency is that I represent is a funding agency. A reform is often understood by people through funding. I would like to start from the startups. Startups. Why startups? Top 500 countries are rated each year, and all the data is collected. In 1960, 63 years of age was an average life circle of the top 500 companies. The last data in 2018 shows is 12 years lifespan, average lifespan for companies among the top 500, which means that we have the program Lithuania 2030. We need to understand that top 500 companies in Lithuania will be set up this year, last year, or the next year. So how can we encourage startups? Startups use 5 things that come from the research of American scientists. And there are 5 aspects that are the most important here. Idea is something which is very important because ideas need to be encouraged. 28% goes to the idea for startups. Business model is also important. It gets 24% of importance. But this is not sufficient. The team is necessary. Team is much more necessary here, much more important. Marketing competences and leadership competences need to be also used. Now, funding is also important. It gets 14%. And the last aspect, which is sometimes considered as fun, which means proper timing and place. 42% of respondents say that it is important for startups. What does it mean? It means the proper ecosystem. One of the most famous authors in US, Stephen Johnson, has said that innovations do not happen because of incentives, but because of the innovation-friendly environment. And this proves a previous slide that timeliness, a proper time and place is very important. We want to live in an innovative and digital world and country. We need to understand our space. We live in the center of Europe. We are the bridge between the East and the West. We have a wonderful geopolitical situation. This is the world map and where we are. Let us find the bridge between the East and the West, the center of Europe, and the official map. I cannot find Lithuania. Well, it is in a very strange place. It is an official map used in Australia. We forget that every country chooses a map to place its own country in the center. For example, the map used in the USA would be placed at the center. In China, the same goes about China and other countries. Lithuania also has its own map, which places it at the center of Europe. So I believe that every country believes that it is proper, and it is proper in its place and in time. The Antarctica would be the best position, I believe. But there is another map. According to the ratings of innovation, this is standard used in all the countries. It shows 3 regions that can be defined as innovative. So these are 10 countries according to the ratings of innovation. There are 3 regions The first region is the United States of America, the Silicon Valley. You know it, and this is the best place for innovation. The second region, which is also considerable, which is Japan, Singapore, and Malaysia. And there is another area, Germany, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Lithuania also are ranked quite high. We often forget that we are not the bridge between the East and the West, and we are not the center of Europe, but we are a part of the region which is most innovative in the world, and we have to use this place in order to create incentives for other things. This means that we can create a proper environment, and this cannot be done unless we reform our ecosystem. It is rather complicated to reform it, and for this we need to analyze what this reform can give us. Fifty-three 53% of companies can be innovative by 2020. We can use the efforts to increase and improve the situation that we are having now. The innovation potentials are analyzed of every country, and it shows that there are 3 leading countries according to the growth of innovation. The United Kingdom is ranked 3 with 10% of growth. The second place goes to Malta, and Lithuania is ranked 1. It has 20% of growth in 6 years. We underestimate it, but this should be taken into account. It entails many, many positive things that can be achieved in the future. The 3 most important aims. First is unified research and innovation policy. When we speak about unified research and innovation policy, we mean we ask the question, isn't it unified? How much unified it is, we ask. 3 or 4 years ago, the statistical analysis showed by the comparison of Lithuania and Sweden. For example, Lithuanian innovative companies included no food processing industry, and food processing industry considered itself innovation-free. For example, meat production, for example, cannot be produced by new technologies. But food industries never declared their researchers. For example, in Sweden, all the food processing companies declare as being innovative and research companies. So this is the attitude where one country declares itself as innovative and another country does not. The same goes to other areas. We have innovations. We need to understand that we are doing innovations. Attracting innovative FDAs is very important. It's one of the areas which includes digitalization, fintech, govtech, and other things. We have to find the areas not that existed yesterday or exist now, but we have to look at the future areas where we can become leaders in the world. and not only try to copy something. Attracting innovative foreign direct investments means that money can improve everything. Sometimes we're asked whether appropriate funds are allocated for innovations, and actually the amounts are quite considerable. In Lithuania, we have more than 100,000 economic entities. And this shows that quite a considerable sum can go to each individual company if we look at the allocations. But according to all the data of innovation map, we are in a very poor position according to the economic impact. So all the innovation is focused on the impact, on the positive impact on economy.
But
The Department of Statistics compared the time between 2012 to 2016. It's a lengthy period for an economy. In 2012, we had 2.4 billion euros from new products. And by 2016, that became 6.6 million. So it's quite strange that our productiveness is growing, but other figures aren't. Investment before were not as successful as we would expect. Why was that? Let's look into that slide. We have 4 R&D areas: fundamental research, science, innovation, and development. If we look at 10 top countries in the world and compare their percentages with Lithuania's percentages, we will see that worldwide experimental development and production of new products is the most important, whereas in our country, research is most important. Let's take an example from Iceland. They had an innovative company, and the state, as small as Iceland, cannot invest so much into the global research. We need to invest into research, they said, but it shouldn't be the leading role. They don't even publishing articles is a huge investment into global research. So in Iceland, they rather fund more, put more funding into the development, not into research. So the companies should concentrate on funding development. Projects should be short-termed, funded through processes that ensure that products reach the market as soon as possible, within 1 year or within 6 months at best. This is my last slide. It demonstrates 3 matters that the reform will cover. Most of the matters have been already implemented, and we will feel it very soon. We will be the best placed for innovation. The global map will have Lithuania at its center. Thank you.
Dėkoju, Kęstuti, už jūsų.
Thank you, Kęstutis, for your presentation. It was very informative. Do you have any questions from the audience? Or maybe some remarks? Hello, I have one technical question. Is the agency individually choosing the data, or the Department of Statistics is used? The Department of Statistics provides data at different angles, but they are not always appropriate for our activities and analysis. Certainly, we have different sources, and we are performing some research ourselves. And we are engaging in comparisons, so we are comparing it with the data of the Statistics Department. In the recent 3 or 4 years, we have been closely cooperating with the Department of Statistics. We're helping them to form different explanations, and we are quite in a collaboration mode. Well, my question is about business and science cooperation. How does the reform help to improve and to encourage the cooperation between science and business? Well, this is one of the most important concepts. I think that the attitude is an obstacle. We have one of the most innovative project where business buys services from science. For example, Japan also has similar things. When science buys the lack of competences from business. So I believe that the innovation reform will help us to change this model when we think science business, but we can find a business science relation. It is very important for the scientists to have a certain evaluation mechanism. If a scientist can be evaluated according to his or her cooperation with the business, and sometimes the most the newest ideas are established here, this cooperation will be much bigger. According to the information of the Statistics Department, Lithuania's cooperation level is more than average. But in terms of amount, we are actually not in a very good position in Europe. Thank you for your answer and for your presentation. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Giedrius Viliūnas, Director of the Research and Higher Education Monitoring and Analysis Center, who will present smart specialization strategy in Lithuania and its current situation and future prospects. Good morning. Thank you for the possibility to take part in this discussion and to speak on behalf of the Research and Higher Education Monitoring and Analysis Center, MOSTA. We are changing our identity, and finally the law will be amended. We will become the Governmental Analysis Center. Our main aim will be to analyze data, to make the information, and to find the arguments for the formation of policy. So evidence-based policy is our aim. Therefore, we feel very well in this discussion. My task is similar to that of Mr. Shatkus. I would like to present one of the instruments that would help Lithuania to digitalize. Innovation reform is one of the prerequisites for modernization of a country. So smart specialization is a more narrow but financially strong and ideologically strong instrument for Lithuania. So those who are not well aware of this instrument, I will remind you that this is an EU policy which is related to the regional policy, which aims at reducing uneven positions in Europe. In Europe, there are 50% of countries that are actually leading in innovation. But this shows the differences of the regions. If you look at the standard parameters of the investment in science, and for example, Poland and Germany and France, really shows a very different situation. Some regions are marked in darker colors and some in lighter colors. So you can see that these countries are quite uneven. So in order to use all the potential, we need some political efforts. And the data of the last year shows that the European Union and the neighboring regions have similar strategies. This shows that regional and national studies have been performed on this. And after the first financial period, we can see that the effect can be seen. Though this ideology is just at the starting point, there are some lagging behind. But the main thing is that investment from the European funds in the previous and in the future financial periods are related to this strategy as a must. The European Union will not invest its structural funds if we don't have this strategy. Therefore, Lithuania has this strategy, and it is time to think about further progress because it is related to money and to our taxpayers' money. Therefore, if we want to do something or to achieve something, we need to think about our investment, including digitalization. So this needs to be discussed. So now briefly on the development of this strategy. In 2012, we were in the preparation phase. We had an entrepreneurial discovery process. We researched our priority directions. The strategy was approved in 2015. And as many of us know that the implementation lagged behind. In reality, the allocations were made in 2017, and the funds are being invested. In 2018, we made an interim evaluation. We could not see the full situation because the period was too short. And since 2023, we will have the next financial period and financial program. And today, we have 6 directions of the smart specialization and 20 actions. And there's no need to discuss this because the number of priorities is too big. 6 directions are even too much for the small country, and 20 priorities is much too much. So in red, while some formulations might appear to be old, we have cloud computing, for example. In the cloud computing is not very important, all this array of priorities. So this big number of priorities shows that in reality we don't invest much into innovation and science. And smart specialization is related to the cooperation between business and science and improvement of potential. Kęstutis said that we are on the average. Our data, unfortunately, shows a different situation. If we look at the public sector without the European funds, our situation is quite poor. So science is underfunded in Lithuania. We might move to different models in the future. Smart specialization actually entailed a certain documentation system. It was not easily accessible to end users. So the allocations here amounted to 782.44 million euro. These resources were not only used to innovations, but to other areas. As you can see, it would take too much time to explain all the logics. All these small squares show investment into business, and then the bigger ones are related to businesses. In order to support science is actually a challenge to Lithuania. We've achieved it. We are not lagging behind in the area of science. And this program is effective. In the report of 2018, we attempted to evaluate the effect. So you can see here the number of applications and the number of applications that were satisfied. So you can see a contrasting situation. The red lines show the areas of cloud computing and also electronic content. The numbers are not that big. In several years that were not very productive, the effect is not clearly seen, though 816 projects were financed, but they're dispersed among different areas, and only 9 projects attracted considerable amounts. The quality of applications was not very positive. The need of innovation was not that big in our evaluations. And we concluded that we have a lot of money, but we don't have ideas. And we failed to direct this money into the right areas. We didn't have this big gap between the number of applications and the number of funded projects. Information technologies, digitalization, transport were considered as one. Transport, unfortunately, is not innovative. And we concluded that these things have to be separated and that funding has to be continued to transport. So this is the real situation. And in the context of our discussion, I believe that we have to look at visions, not only look at the visions, but we have to look at the basis, which is quite weak. We could take a higher leap, but we failed to do this. In 2018, we had the midterm. The Ministry of Education, Science and Sport and Education of Economy and Innovation went for the merger of and consolidation of different scenarios. So 7 directions were established. It is not a bad solution. This was a more technical change. Now, in the second part of the period, it is not proper to change the strategy. We have to think about the future. Well, this is the slide that would take too long to comment. The logics of documentation has become more simplified. Now, our achievements so far, 0.8 billion euro. Half of it has been invested. Half of it will be invested in the future for future applicants. The problems have not changed and have not been solved. We are still lagging behind in some sectors, and we fail to modernize and transform in our economic sectors. And the Commission indicates that in its reports. I think that this is an effect of a marathon, when you move but you don't lead. We are not lagging behind, actually, we are moving forward. But if we want to be among the top best, we have to improve our pace. We are actually developing a new specialization with the Ministry of Economic and Innovation and with the Ministry of Education, Science and Sport. We are following the discussions on the new financial framework in Europe and the rules for investing in European structural funds. So far, there's a lack of clarity, and we know why, because the new financial framework has not been approved. The Brexit is still ongoing, and we don't know its effects. In several years, some of the rules have not changed, and the structural funds will finally be decreased for Lithuania because we've climbed a higher class. But the concentration of structural funds will be made towards innovation, and innovation and smart specialization will be funded on the equal level, or even on a higher level. So we will have about 1 billion euro for that. Certain enabling conditions, which are listed here, are being implemented, which means to strengthen the capability of research and innovation system, to promote the growth and competitiveness of small and medium-sized companies. And this strategy will not be able to be implemented in the future without certain areas. And digitalization is something that is a prerequisite for that. And finally, is skills and entrepreneurship skills. Smart specialization is a prerequisite now, and education systems have to be included into this profile. And from the very primary education to the old age people, policy can be created here for education, digital education here. And this is a slide about the specific context of our work plan. And now the Progress Forum is ongoing in the Novotel Hotel. Smart specialization will have to be included into the strategic planning. We have discussed a lot on the national level, and we have provided proposals for the government and for the Ministry of Finance. And the responsible ministries see that the national progress report has to include the sectoral or vertical, or we should have one of the horizontal dimension. In parallel with the European Union, we have to assign the partnership agreement. We have the Smart Specialization Development Plan, and we have to match it with our program. And when the Ministry of Economy and Innovation indicates, we might start all the programming. So this brings me to the end of my presentation.
Thank you for such an informative presentation. Do you have any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any comments? And what are the priorities? From 10 to 7, now you've diminished the number of priorities. That's interesting. But what is the basis for your setting of priorities? How do you narrow the priorities? Well, indeed, there were no radical changes. We simply scrapped the small priorities and made the scale of the priorities larger. Energy, health technologies were not deleted from the list, but I think they should, because radical changes here are not very smart. We technically narrowed the number of priorities, but didn't really do that in factual terms. That was the decision of the ministers. Thank you for your answer. I'm sorry I was late. I'm late after the session in the seimas. I didn't hear everything. Well, strategies, plans, improvement is all good, but what's changed? In the European Commission, they have one or two main indicators. Well, let's take private investment and its investment into innovation private sector's investment. We understand we do this, and this indicator will inevitably increase or diminish. But the plans, the improvements you've been talking about, doesn't seem to be anything new. Do you have a palpable indicator which will increase? Well, I have a double answer to you. As for smart specialization, we don't see its effect as for now. And we can't see whether it's wide, spreading it through 6 priorities is the right thing to do. But it would not be a good idea to radically change the specialization, so there are no real change right now. For the next period, though, you're right. There are too many priorities. You can't reach 20 priorities at a time with 10 million euro per 4 years. So we will need to make a decision. We need to concentrate into 3 to 5 areas. The role of the seimas will be central to that. The Ministry of Economy and Finance will contribute to that as well. We will look into the further direction later. What is the indicator that you use which will tell us how the situation has changed? What specific indicator could you use? I could invite colleagues who work with smart specialization to comment on the indicators that we follow, that we analyze. Hello. Currently, the key indicators have been foreseen in the strategy. We have not seen any change in these indicators, such as innovativeness, funding for business, innovative export of innovative products and services. We will only know that by the end of the program. The indicators to be used for the future period has not been yet created. There are guidelines at the European Commission. I believe that, as Director has said, we will make certain actions to find out about that. So we don't even measure the progress, and we aren't even prepared to do that. So it's mutatis mutandis. It's something that seems like a fairy tale. Vice Minister Vilda from Ministry of Innovation and Economy. The assessment of the specialization demonstrates that the number of employees is increasing by 2%, and the one indicator that we, as the ministry, are using, the number of innovative companies and the size of their investment into development is the indicator. If we look into this Department of Statistics and its innovative activity report, the number of innovative companies is growing 3 times compared to the period between 2010 to 2016. So it's also thanks to the investment of the previous period into R&D. What we're going to measure is the growth. Now we have 47%. We want to achieve 53%. This is what we're doing. The review of the innovative specialization is one of the processes we've done within the innovation reform. There are 9 actions all in all, and if we look into the use of investment, the investment is used not in the way we foresaw in the strategy documents. It's not used enough. The ministry has invested 70% of the funding. The sports ministry has invested 1/3 of its funding. The review of the smart specialization and the reduction of a number of priorities will allow a larger number of entities to provide bids and to provide applications. Many smart companies couldn't couldn't get the funding because of the limitations of the program. Now we will reduce the limitations, and the companies will get more funding. Thank you. I believe that after the last presentation, we will follow up with a discussion, and I give the floor to Mr. Paulius Vertelka, Director of Infobalt, to speak about Lithuania's digital economy objectives. Hopefully, the Ministry of Economy and Innovation will probably be renamed, and thanks to him, they maybe will rename it into Digital Economy Ministry. Thank you. We raised that matter several years ago, and now, a year onwards, we have structural changes at the ministerial level in the seimas, and we have ambitious proposals to look into the digital economy even more. Well, I am director of the Infobalt. I represent the information technology sector. We consist of 160 members from business organizations. My presentation will be objective, and I will start with a digital economy as such. 6 years ago, we had the first debate at the international level on digital economy at the European Commission and in the Australian government, as well as in the European Parliament. It relates to physical economy in general, and it's not just about the ICT. It's outside the ICT code name. One of the ways to look at that we use in the Infobalt to understand the environment we are surrounded by is digital economy and digitalized economy. What we have in the core are producers and providers of hardware, creators of software, and the ICT infrastructure. The second core platform you can see is a business based on digitalization, business which couldn't work without digitalization. And the third platform here is the traditional economy, which is being digitalized, it's improving in efficiency, and it becomes dependent and empowered by digital technology. In public policy, we're naturally expanding the term, but we see some challenges in this respect. When the globe debates on digital economy, OECD has its own group. The World Economic Forum has Shaping the Future of Digital Economy and Society. And in Lithuania, we have certain initiatives such as FinTech and Industry 4.0. However, we don't have a single comprehensive vision on the matter. We don't have digital society or digital technology in the strategy documents. Digital economy in the strategy documents is not present. It's high time to do that. It's high time to change the existing legislation. So this is the reality. What happens to the ICT sector now? In 2012 to 2017, the IT sector demonstrated the highest growth in economy. It amounted to over 40%. It correlated well with income and the added value. You have ICT, you have communications. The IT created €1 billion. As a result, Lithuania generates €2 million per year of an added value. So what? I can't fully answer the question. We also understand the exports of IT services is growing. So Lithuania is also a market for our technology developers. When we receive 2018 data, we will understand also that many of the developers leave Lithuania, and that raises concerns. Why doesn't Lithuanian market take in the newly created products? The number of employees is increasing, the vacancies and the number of vacancies is on the increase as well. This is a graph from the Lithuanian Department of Statistics from a quarterly report. 1 year ago, we had 1,000 vacancies in the IT sector, in the ICT sector. Now there are 13,000 vacancies. So the need has increased and has far outreached to the number of experts our universities can prepare. This demonstrates the need for experts in the sector. As for specialities, the developers of software are needed. Telecommunications are the least growing sector, but the effect of digitalization is felt there as well. We know that about the IT and the ICT sector, the things that I've represented. The ICT sector is represented by Infobalt, but now the Infobalt has outreached and expanded. So we're trying to find meaning in other parts of digital economy. What do we know about that? We know that almost 50,000 Lithuanians now are engaged in a digital economy and employed in digital economy. You can see the graph there. 30,000 work in ICT sector, over 33,000 ICT specialists are in place. This means that 59% of Lithuania's ICT sector and are not employed in the ICT sector as such. So less than half of the employees are fully employed in ICT sector. A similar situation is in the UK, where 53% ICT experts work outside the ICT sector. What is the ICT sector, after all? What do we do with that? Next, what we know is that when we look into the measurements on our economy, companies are distributed into various sectors, into various lists, and we can see the variety of that distribution. We know that Pigų.lt belongs to Indent Sale Vindent to internet services, Traffic-based Spectral Coin and TransferGo belong to some other kind of activities, and we don't even understand what is this. WePower seems to be producing electricity, which is not fully the case. This is a hard situation which prevents us from systematic understanding on what is happening with our economy, digital economy today. This is not the end of our questions, though. An international debate is in place in the IVM and the OECD. They make assessments on a yearly basis on the digital economy, and here are the problems they've come up with. The role of digital society is quite difficult to assess. How do we evaluate the part of the contribution to GDP of free of charge services funded from advertising? We never count that. Maybe let's say a service is created in the US, the value is counted in Ireland, and so on and so forth. Another problem is that international trade creates the conditions that where the user becomes an importer, and how do we account for that and for its contribution to economy? There are many question marks here. There is a hypothesis here also that the lower productivity growth of developed countries are related to the problems with counting the GDP, because we're using the old measures to assess the new reality. Let's say the travel agents are no longer physical persons. We look for plane tickets online, and now this is not counted into the GDP. So we have a huge headache with about that. What are the real facts we should be basing ourselves on? What facts should the politicians use to make decisions? So what is the situation of digital economy, and what are the prospects for the future? This is yet another way to approach the digital economy. Today, the Ministry of Economy and Innovation is an epicenter of the digital economy and policy. Most of the elements of the digital economy are now within the control of the Ministry of Economy and Innovation. This is a huge change compared to years ago, when nobody really had ways to control and to take a strategic approach. We're very happy with that change. Notably, there are many countries where assessment of the size of digital economy is in place. We're happy that the Ministry of Economy and Innovation has also taken up the challenge to measure the things we're talking about, the digital economy. It assessed Lithuania's digital economy and saw that it was creating 7.2% of added value. Its growth accounts for 30%. And if we contribute to that, the share of the subsector of the economy, such as the links and interconnections, this will be even greater. So the key starting point of this exercise is the fact that if we can measure that, we can achieve better results. A year ago, we could really look into the data of the Department of Statistics on ICT. Later, the Ministry of Economy and Innovation said that a different measure should be used than the one used by the Department of Statistics. McKinsey & Company came to Lithuania and demonstrated a new, more conservative model for assessing how much GDP is generated by digital economy. For future, they foresaw that by 2025, digital economy in Lithuania will create 20% of GDP in our country, which means that 9 billion of euros of added value will be achieved. It's a good prospect. What can we do to achieve that? I'm happy that we're reaching some of the aspects in the debate today in terms of developing digital skills of end users. The industry is talking about the problems of digitalization of our business. This is only the start, though. The Ministry of Innovation and Economy has taken up the exercise of organizing the work of the public sector so that our citizens receive good e-services. This is a good direction to be taken. However, the speed is unsatisfactory. The speed in digital economy is much faster than the development of public sector. We have policy 1.0 and industry 4.0. So we're in a situation where we always lag behind the technology. In order to overcome the lag, we need specific measurements, indicators, things which would allow us to make decisions on the basis of measurements and facts. Otherwise, we will never know how to do this or work in a fragmented manner. It's our task to employ a strategy. And the situation today is a good one because today when we are within a league of countries where we are not looking for the best practices, we are creating best practices and trying to understand what is the most useful for us. I'm very happy about that, and I wish you every success.
Thank you for your presentation. Now, do we have any questions from the audience? We will have a discussion afterwards, so if we have no questions, I would like to give the floor to our last speaker, Mr. Gintaras Vilda, Vice Minister of Economics and Innovation. He will speak about the National Industrial Digitalization Platform, Industry 4.0, as a guide towards leadership. The ministry is very much promoting digitalization, and there is a working group which aims at identifying problems and offering solutions. Now the floor is yours, Mr. Vilda. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, vice ministers, colleagues, dear guests. Well, it is encouraging that today in the Seimas we can present the progress of the country in digitalizing our economy and making Lithuania more digitalized economy country than a traditional economy country. Our platform, Industry 4.0, created by our ministry and developed by 100 experts, is a good example how a community can be made to transform everything. Where did this need came from? Mr. Juncker's political guidelines for the European Commission underline the importance of a strong and high-performance industry for the future of Europe's economy and highlight the need to bring the industry's share of the EU's GDP up to 20% by 2020. In 2017, the Digital Conference in Tallinn and the European Council of 2017 expressed the need to invest in the digitalization of our economies and the acquisition of missing competencies in order to maintain and strengthen Europe's competitiveness, the quality of our lives, and its social fabric. It is directly related to digitalization. While Lithuania undertook this initiative, well, the situation was very similar in Lithuania. In 30 years of our country, we had achieved some positive results, and the manufacturing sector was the largest economic sector, generating 20.4% of Lithuania's gross domestic product. We thought about the possibility of a strategy 2030 of how to move forward, moving forward. Certainly, after the financial crisis, Lithuanian industry recovered and grew substantially, and we can see that the industrial productivity reached 62%, but there's still room for improvement. Over the past years, labor costs have risen by 40%, and productivity in the Lithuanian manufacturing sector is only 14%, and this is an obstacle for future competitiveness of the Lithuanian manufacturing sector. The industry producing low and intermediate production generates 3/4 of total production. Too slow technological restructuring, and on the other hand, there's a slow the growth of the sector of low and intermediate production. High manufacturing sector, high technological development sector produces only 3.6% of production so far. In order to improve the competitiveness of the Lithuanian manufacturing industry, improve citizens' quality of life, and improve the social fabric of the country's region, the Ministry of Economy and Innovation set up the Industry 4.0 platform. In 2018, a guide was created and established, and we are among 15 countries that have similar leadership platforms and that are also aspiring at industrial transformation of their economies. Among the Baltic states, we are the only ones, and we can see that both Latvia and Estonia really envy us and are inviting us to different meetings in order to repeat our success stories in their respective countries and in their industries. However, the guide gives a certain high ambition for industry, and our ambition is to be formally visible and to become the leader of digitalization of industry. We had several aims by this guide. One was visible and the other was invisible. When we speak about the formally visible goal, we were aiming at evidence-based policy making, data collection, analysis, recommendation, and action plan by 2030, including the short-term perspective for 2020 and the interim perspective, and to look even further beyond 2027. The invisible goal was the formation of inclusive policy making to employ Industry 4.0 experts to discuss and to look for solutions and to take up leadership to make this not the state, not the national leadership, but the civic leadership by saying that Lithuania can do and Lithuania will do it. It was quite natural that we were also aiming at some marketing goals where regional policymakers and the European Commission should create the image that Lithuania is aware of the importance of digitalization and is developing measures and action plans for the short, medium, and long-term prospects. And finally, enable information of the European Commission about Lithuania's achievements in industrial digitalization. Therefore, the initiative itself was very much coordinated with the European Commission, and the European Commission followed our progress. It gave us a lot of useful advice and recommendations, and we were included as a progressive region and included into its industrial transformation region, where 7 European regions and 2 countries were included, with Lithuania and Slovakia with a good industrial preparation. And finally, our final goals that were not officially stated was integrated with European programs and measure plans. This ambitious plan of measures was designed to help the Lithuanian industry become smart and more competitive across Europe. So that Lithuania could be seen as an important player through its value chains and be useful to everyone. When we made the SSG analysis, we saw the vision of 2030, and we actually saw 3 statements. I don't know whether you can see them. So the first statement of the vision shows that it is a great ambition. It shows that we want to see our industry in the future. This it is too ambitious, it is different from the reality, but these are good examples, and the examples that we have in Lithuania suggest that such companies can grow even further, and if the state is able to act in an orderly manner and create a complete package of measures to promote digitalization. So an ambition that is not fantastic but actually being implemented. A second statement of the vision reflects our desire for maximum integration into the international value chains. As I've already mentioned, 80% of production in Lithuania is exported, but so far these are low added value products. In order to access new markets, this has to be done through owners new companies that are attracted as FDIs to Lithuania and opportunities given by them. So we have to become good partners with those big companies. On the national level, we need to consolidate different agencies and forces and to create the synergies between the business support services and all those forces, so that businesses find it easier to integrate into the global market. The third statement of the vision is addressed at the decision providers. This is something that my colleague has provided. This is ICT, robotics, electronics, and so on. So we position Lithuania as a smart technology sandbox. This is a place where something can be tested and tested rapidly, because decisions are taken in Lithuania in a fast manner, and we are open for innovation. So we are very flexible and easily adaptable. And in this case, we see that if Investuok.lt attracts innovative plans with high R&D intensity, and if the measures stimulating the transformation of the local manufacturing function correctly, the potential to put the vision in practice is rather realistic and easily achievable. So how do we work? We made a huge research because we needed analysis and data, and we needed recommendation and conclusions. We selected 7 European countries, but we used 6. So Belgium, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Finland, Sweden, the production leaders. We skipped Ireland because but everybody speaks about Ireland as a good example, but in terms of production, Ireland is not a good example because it is into life industry and life industry and life medicine. Therefore, it is ineffective to compare this country with the manufacturing. And we can see that the results are evident. And you can see the line which marks Lithuania. It is encouraging that Lithuania is so far equivalent to innovative countries in terms of production volume and the number of employees in manufacturing industry. However, in practice, we have unused reserves in all areas, since other countries are able to obtain better results. Therefore, incentives are needed to increase productivity in businesses, increase industrial value-added products, which immediately influence the human turnover rate and allow people to earn more. The growth of turnover is related directly to the added value. The Ministry of Economics and Innovation in 2018 launched the innovation reform and a series of changes to facilitate Lithuanian innovative enterprises. So companies carrying out R&D and innovation activities and startups have gotten easy access to the means of the promotion of ITS in vouchers and other measures. We are performing similar studies on an annual basis, and we hope that the analysts from different companies will contribute to our efforts. So these are the technologies that have the greatest effects on our industry. And 20 technologies were defined here. They are listed here. Digitalization LT was actually using that, and those technologies were eligible for funding, and we consider these technologies as technologies for the development of smart specialization strategy in the area of flexible manufacturing systems in order to define the priorities for research and public investment. So these are the technologies that need to be developed. What else we managed to find? When we looked at the ecosystem model of production, we found
There is a clear distinction there between users on the one hand and solutions and service providers on the other. Therefore, two types of value chains have been analyzed. The value chains for end users and the value chains for providers. The analysis assessed criteria such as export quantity, production structure, share in the total economy, development trends, and productivity. The following value chains were found to be relevant for end users: machinery and equipment, wood and furniture, electrical engineering, plastics, and food industry. Value chains relevant to decision-making were identified as information and communication technology, automation and robotics, and digital manufacturing processes, including electronic systems and component providers. It is here that our industry has its best and most progress is likely. The strengths we have identified are the following. In the Lithuanian economy, the production sector accounts for the optimum of slightly more than 20% of Lithuania's GDP. Manufacturing companies are well integrated into the international value chains. And this is a strength we need to maintain. More than 80% of local production is exported. In the long-term perspective, and in view of the technology change in Europe, as well as strategic value chains in Europe, such as batteries, microelectronics, e-transport, and the infrastructure associated, including transformation of cities and smart aging, including data processing, cyber security, information, and industrial internet, and hydrogen economy, and hydrogen strategic value change. Well, in all these sectors, we can see that the sector needs strengthening, and we need to maintain the industrial potential we have here. As for public and private ICT infrastructure, we believe it is up to date. We are among the global leaders in this sector. It is very good that global high-rate internet connectivity is ensured. We are well ahead of the Western countries because they are still in the need of developing their networks and the high-speed internet. We have a high-speed internet already. The Ministry of Economy and Innovation, which took over the ICT sector last year, has launched a broad reform of economy to open up public infrastructure and data to citizens and businesses. We believe this is also a good factor. What are the weaknesses of Lithuania? There are things to be improved. There is room for improvement. The contribution of members of parliament is needed because the country is still dominated by low-tech SMEs, which limits investment and overall progress in production. The country is still dominated by low-value-added contracts production, which is good for the economy and human well-being, because you see how the products are going to develop, and you can develop yourself, but this limits the need for cutting-edge technological solutions and cooperation with science and innovations based on the knowledge from the EU Horizon programs and open science. We want products that are knowledge-intensive and that promote the cooperation with Lithuanian scientists and innovators. There is a lack of balance in the labor market, which means that there is a significant imbalance between education supply and the needs of the industry. While the development of 2018 is very positive, the outcome will only be visible in 2 or 3 years. Whereas the discussion that was launched this year on what Lithuania needs more, whether it needs lawyers more or whether it needs IT personnel more, it is very worrying for Lithuanian legal and technology developments. Lithuania has to make a decision here. The Ministry of Sports and the Ministry of Economy and Innovation have agreed that they will find funding for STEM, for sciences. We have a fragmented system of support measures with weak links between the elements of the framework. When measures are implemented through agencies, the latter do not have an incentive to move towards combining measures and making great impact, while public officials in the ministry have too few levers and competences. They need more levers. They need increased competences, which are more integrated and have a greater impact. Another concern is a slowly developing culture of partnership in Lithuania, which prevents cooperation with other ecosystem actors. This consists of the government sector, the business, and the research community. We believe that we need to reinforce the mutual respect and trust between these 3 players. The mandate issued by the Seimas to implement the law on technology and innovation reform seeks to transform the industrial structure and a technologically modern and knowledge-intensive one. This will require certain social measures. The key measures in the guidelines consist of talent, knowledge, infrastructure, and environment, where we want to create synergies between Lithuanian researchers and engineers. These are groups of measures. Of course, we have more than 50 measures envisaged in the guidelines. Most importantly, the knowledge, talent, infrastructure, and environment need to be reinforced, and weaknesses need to be reduced. For making that, we need to make use of the opportunities created by the single European market, and for that we need to make targeted use of the leverage of public and private investment. Our agencies can well contribute to that. This slide shows a bird's-eye view of the situation. I believe that the main areas where we see potential for best synergies are the overlapping areas where talent and infrastructure overlap, where knowledge and infrastructure overlap, where talent and infrastructure, where knowledge and talent interact and overlap. Where are we using that? Thanks to the guidelines, we agreed on a common vision, key tools, and a detailed plan to make breakthrough in industrial digitalization in the context of 2021 to 2027 in the new financing period. We believe that we can do a lot already in 2019 and 2020. for emergency measures. Our guidelines offer strategic objectives, specific measures, and a system of measurement of achievement which can be integrated to the preparation of the main Lithuanian strategic documents. The finance strategy, which Mr. Viliūnas mentioned in particular. Those Industry 4.0 of the National Industrial Digitalization Platform and the guidelines towards industrial leadership drafted by the Ministry of Economy and Innovation shows that Lithuania can base its own future on smart society through innovation, through bringing together the digital economy and the industry of the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Now we have some time for questions, answers, and some discussions. Do we have any questions for the speakers? The presentations were very extensive. I would like to thank the guests and the speakers. Digital Lithuania is not our final aim that we can sign with relief. This is an eternal process, and the areas that were previously considered non-digital and continuous cooperation between the private and public sector, policy orientation and investment into necessary skills in the future will contribute to Lithuania becoming even more digital. I can only express the hope that our subcommittee will become a committee in the parliament, because we really need much focus on this area. The Ministry of Economy now is the economy of economics and innovation. I invite you all to contribute to creating Digital Lithuania. Thank you very much and have a nice day.